Hello, welcome to MomFit with Joe Peters. I am Joe, your host. Welcome also to the Spanglish World Network and her network at Singo TV channels 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Singo TV app in the respective app stores, iOS and Android devices. While you are downloading, make sure that you rate it and leave a comment. The app is free. Singo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire Stick, Roku, and Roku Stick in all smart TVs since 2016. Welcome to MomFit. Today, we are going to have a beautiful chat with a beautiful soul. I am super excited, partially because I share with her not only the love for moms and moms to be, but also the love for yoga. April, welcome to be here. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. It's a little early here too. Well, I want to tell you a little bit about April first. April is a prenatal and postnatal yoga fitness professional, prenatal yoga teacher trainer, beer doula, birth childbirth educator, and placenta encapsulation specialist with over 10 years of experience. She came to this world due to the experience she had with her first birth, where she learned very quickly that her experience could have been better pregnancy and an empowering birth experience as a transition into motherhood. And then I think that a lot of us agree with April, and that is why we are doing this work. She is the founder of Unfold Motherhood, which is both an online community and in-person yoga studio in Brea, California. April, thank you so much for coming here, sharing your wisdom, and I'm excited to start diving in with you about all this part of the movement and how we can help our mamas to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. Always excited to talk all things pregnancy, birth, and motherhood.
Good. I want to like what we're going. I want to start with the title of this talk. Like it was very interesting because you call it like the yoga of motherhood. So I want to talk a little bit about that, what that means to you, and what you mean with like the yoga of motherhood. And then also one thing that I would love is the phrase that April loves, and I want all of you to actually write down this. And actually, my advice is put it in several places around your house, in your bedroom, in your kitchen, because I love this phrase. And her phrase is done is better than perfect. So, April, why you don't just start today with those two things? What is yoga of motherhood, and why is so important for you to have that mantra of done is better than perfect?
Yeah, absolutely. So the yoga of motherhood is something that I kind of coined more recently, but what I think it really stands for is things look different once we become mothers, and yoga looks different. Pre-pregnancy, before we had little ones, we could just go and take a group fitness class. We could take a yoga class, whatever it is that we find flow in, whether that's yoga or something else. But when we transition to a space of motherhood, it looks different. And if we can take the tools that we learn on the mat and apply them off the mat into our motherhood experience, and just these little simple things can make such a huge impact on how we feel and how we respond, our relationships with our partners, our friends, our children. And I think a lot of us discount how simple these things are that we can incorporate into our life, and they can have such a big impact. And I'm really passionate about, what, especially my newly postpartum moms, talking to them about how they can take time for themselves to essentially feel more of themselves again. Something as simple as taking a moment and breathing, or stepping outside and feeling the fresh air on your skin, and just taking these little moments and evolving that into the yoga of motherhood. So that's kind of where it came from. And yoga looks different now. It's not what it was before, but I'm modifying and I'm adjusting and I'm pivoting to make it work with where I am on the motherhood journey now. And that changes as your children grow older.
That's beautiful. And it's so important because one of the things that we work and we try so hard and usually we don't have people like you, like me, to talk about this publicly enough. And that is, we have this society pressure of you need to spring back to the pre-birth, to the pre-pregnancy Joe, to the pre-pregnancy April, and that is only creating more stress, more frustration, and triggering some of those postpartum disorders, because the reality is it's not possible. You
Yeah.
are so it's not that you lose that person, but you just evolve and change and have so many other new things that is not fair. I always have this analogy with a caterpillar and a butterfly. It's almost like if you tell the butterfly, like, well, now you are done the work and now you're a butterfly, go back to act and do and behave like you were when you were a caterpillar. You will never do that, because you will accept and admire the transformation that the caterpillar had, and admire and respect that now she's a butterfly that needs to fly, not a caterpillar that needs to be in the trees eating leaves. So I love how you are incorporating that in your teachings. Now, tell me a little bit about done is better than perfect.
My favorite phrase of all time. As a perfectionist, recovering perfectionist, more so for myself, but then I started to share that with my moms in our postpartum groups, and it really resonated because I think as women, we are perfectionists and we want things to be a certain way. So we're never going to do those things because they're never going to be perfect. We're never going to be in a place where it's the right time to do X, Y, or Z. So I tell my children this, especially my 12-year-old. But done is better than perfect. If we do it, we can then improve on it. And a lot of times we procrastinate because we know it won't be perfect. And if we just take that first step and we do it and we finish it, we'll be surprised at the results. And I feel like that's what got me where I am now, because, opening a yoga studio and just deciding I'm going to change my career path to be a fitness professional and work with pregnant people, I would have never done that if I let perfectionism get in my way. So I am a huge proponent of just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can go back later and refine it, and that will be much easier than taking that first big leap. And I think for motherhood, it can be scary to do anything because everything is so new and you just don't know if this is what you're supposed to be doing. And just taking that first step to do whatever it is you want to do and not really thinking about how it has to be perfect, I think can really reduce your stress during those early postpartum days.
Absolutely. And I love that because I'm a perfectionist in recovery too. So actually, I call myself a peer perfectionist in recovery. I'm a peer person. And one of the powerful things is that not a lot of people know this. And I see with my mamas that come to me working for me, struggling with things like breastfeeding and milk, is that stress is our worst enemy,
Mhm.
especially in the postpartum time. And when we don't adopt that done is better than perfect, one that I like to say is scrappy is the new perfect. When we don't do that, we put that additional stress on us, we put that additional pressure on us. And the reality is, we are shooting ourselves on the foot, because that high level of cortisol is impacting our hormones even more, it's impacting our breast milk amount, is impacting how good our baby can co-regulate with us. So I love how you are being an advocate for that concept of, you know what, mama, do it and do it right. Actually, when you were talking about um, don't wait until it's perfect to do it, I was remember that one of the things that helped me a lot, especially in terms of movement and workout, is a 5 minute rule. That is about, like, done is better than perfect. So instead of getting overwhelmed saying, oh my gosh, when I'm gonna have a full hour to work out, to go to the gym, to go to a class, I start saying, okay, I'm gonna do it for 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes I'm super busy, I need to stop, or after 5 minutes I just don't feel like it, I'm having the right, I'm allowing myself to stop. And the reality is, like what you were saying, as soon as you start at the 5 minute mark, you are feeling so good. You are feeling that you're like, I can go a little longer. So I love, love, love that. April, why you don't go back and tell us a little bit about the story with your first birth, first child, and what was that transition and that inside moment that tell you, okay, this is not how it should be, and I'm gonna work to make sure that other mamas have it different that I did.
Yes, I love telling this story. I can't believe it happened 12 years ago, which that's like a whole nother story. But my first experience with my daughter, pregnancy was hard. It was scary. I was like the first person in my group to experience pregnancy. So I was the one that had to figure it all out. And I found a prenatal yoga class when I was pregnant. It was so impactful, even though it was just once a week. It was at like a really challenging time and it wasn't easy to get to. And I knew right away taking that class, like meeting that teacher who was just, I still am in contact with. She actually was my mentor. That experience, I knew right away I wanted to teach prenatal yoga. And my thought was just, this is really great for pregnant people. I'm going to teach prenatal yoga at times that are a little bit more accessible. And maybe I can offer a couple a week because I was working office hours and I was like, okay, evening and weekend classes, I can do that for fun. And when I took my training, it was taught by two doulas. So it was much more than a prenatal yoga teacher training. It wasn't a fitness training. It was so much deeper than that. That is where I realized that my birth experience, which was really traumatic, was so common. And so many other women had the same exact story to tell, and that it didn't have to be that way. That I could have had a completely different experience that I looked back at fondly. I learned that the trauma that I experienced in my birth also kind of bled into postpartum, something I didn't know at the time. And I just felt like I have to make sure other people don't have this experience that I had. And I went into my pregnancy. I took the classes at the hospital. I read Ina May's book, The Guide to Natural Childbirth. A part of me was thinking, okay, like this is really natural. I'm in good shape. I practice yoga. I'll be fine. And then the other part of me was terrified, like absolutely terrified. And we went into it not asking the right questions. We had a medical, very medical birth. It was an unnecessary induction. And it was just really hard. So, learning everything I learned after the fact, I knew that I wanted to do everything that I could to make sure I could help other people have a better experience. And not in the sense that it has to be an unmedicated birth, it has to be a home water birth. Like you can have a really good experience in a hospital, you can have a really good experience with a medical birth. And I think that's really important for people to understand too, because I think a lot of times we look at people who teach prenatal yoga who are birth doulas and we think that that's all they support. And that's definitely not the case. So I am here to ensure that you have a better pregnancy, birth, and transition into motherhood. And that's why I offer everything that I offer, from the meditation, the yoga, the movement, just feeling good, all the way to, education and postpartum preparation.
And I think that one thing that you touched there that is beautiful about the birth is at the end is not how is performed, is how we as mamas feel empowered and literally strong enough to know that we, like with my moms, I always tell them it's almost like we are in a ship and we are the captain of the ship. We are the ones putting the rib, and then allowing the mom to feel empowered into claiming that power, and don't let insecurities or lack of knowledge of saying, oh, okay, he's the doctor, she's the doctor, they are the nurses, they are the experts, they are the ones leading. So it's not, it's bringing back and saying, like, no, they are my support team, they are here to support me, and they are here to help me, and I'm still the one leading, I'm still the one knowing my body the best, knowing my baby the best. So I love how you talk about that. One of the things that I want to talk with you is what is prenatal yoga and what is not prenatal yoga, because now that you were talking about the prenatal class, I remember one of my moms was sharing, and actually her experience made her go into prenatal yoga teacher training, because she started feeling as her belly grew, then she was going to normal classes, and the normal teachers were like, oh, even bad language with teacher, but like, if you cannot do it like this, you can modify. But even that, there were poses that she was not able to adjust her body and her balance, so she started getting really frustrated, really feeling like a failure with herself, and then just stopped doing yoga for a long time until she realized that there was this option of prenatal yoga. So what is, in your opinion, in your experience, what is prenatal yoga and what is not prenatal yoga?
I love this question. So, this is actually why I created the program I created, because there's a lot of really not great prenatal yoga out there, both in studio and online. We think that when we become pregnant, especially if we already practice yoga, that we'll just modify our practice and it'll be fine. And it will be fine. But that is not prenatal yoga. So, prenatal yoga, the big difference is that it's completely specific to pregnancy. If we're just modifying a regular yoga class, it's not specific to your body now and what it's going through and what it's preparing for. Prenatal yoga is designed to, hit all of those typical aches and pains that we have when we're pregnant. It's designed to create space. So, create space for you, create space for your baby, to help position your baby for birth so you can have less aches and pains during your pregnancy. So, you can have hopefully an easier, shorter labor, right? We all want that. It also, the way that I teach, I incorporate education, I incorporate breathing techniques. We practice mock contractions. So we're mentally preparing you for pregnancy or for birth and postpartum. And then there's also that community aspect. So at the beginning of every class, even my online classes, we all introduce ourselves. We say how far along we are. We'll have like a different topic question where everyone will talk about, say postpartum, and you'll learn from the others around you who are also going through the same thing. So those are kind of the main differences. I always encourage people, especially if you are already like a yoga practitioner, take at least one prenatal yoga class a week. And then, if you want, the other classes can be your regular classes, but you get something so much different out of it. And it's so specific to where you are and what your body is going through.
And talking about that, and both as being yoga practitioners, both of us, we know that yoga is not just the movement. So why you don't just share with the mamas that are hearing here around the world? Let's gonna add them a little bit of value into what we are talking about. So what are one or two things that they can do in their house starting today that are part of that prenatal yoga that are going to benefit them?
Yeah, so absolutely. The yoga is so much more than movement. And I try to really stress that in my class, because if we do come to the practice and we're just, we're doing the movements, but we're not being mindful and we're not paying attention to our breath, then we're not doing yoga. We're just exercising, right? So the things that you can do are really simple. And this goes for everyone, whether you're pregnant or postpartum, is breathing properly. And I always say, like, if you're driving, every time you hit a red light, use that as your reminder to like practice breathing. If you're home, every time you wash your hands, you can use that as an opportunity to practice breathing. So we tend to breathe really shallow. It's just kind of what we do in society as adults. We tend to breathe into our chest. And if we watch our children breathe, we see that they breathe with their whole body. And you see their rib cage flare out when they breathe. So the practice that I teach, the fundamental breathing practice, is breathing deep enough to get your rib cage to move. So the ribs kind of hang out here. If we inhale deep enough into the lungs, they start to spread and lift. And then when we exhale everything out, the lungs empty, the rib cage just kind of settles down. When we breathe that way, we're not using our neck muscles, which tend to get overused. So, washing your hands at a red light, you're going to inhale, deeply expand the ribs. And then as you exhale, you're going to exhale everything out and just let those ribs soften, and practice that throughout your day. So, a little information about that breath, it's called diaphragmatic breathing. It decreases stress, which we could all use, releases tension from the body, but it also wakes up your pelvic floor. So, that's kind of one of the things I teach, especially in my prenatal classes, to learn to connect to your pelvic floor, is that diaphragmatic breathing. So I think that would be kind of like my number one thing for you to start practicing today.
And why is important to connect your breathing to your pelvic floor?
Yes. So I could talk about the pelvic floor all day. So I'll just kind of give you the basics. The pelvic floor is what holds everything in. And especially when we're pregnant, it is overtaxed because we have the weight of the baby and the amniotic fluid and the placenta putting all of that pressure. When it comes time to pushing our babies out, we need to learn how to relax the pelvic floor. And so many times people get pregnant and think they should be practicing all of the Kegels. So they have a strong pelvic floor, which we definitely do want a strong pelvic floor, but we want a pelvic floor that is both tone and can relax. So when we start by just breathing properly, the diaphragm, which is right at the base of the ribs, starts to move, and then the pelvic floor is a mirror to the diaphragm. So when you inhale, the diaphragm presses down, your pelvic floor also presses down. It gets this nice stretch. And then when we exhale, everything comes out of the lungs, the diaphragm lifts back up, the pelvic floor gets a little bit of a lift. So the pelvic floor wakes up, we increase blood flow to the pelvic floor, and those muscles start to become healthier and they will work for us better.
And why we want those muscles to be healthier and work for us better? What would be the benefit to have a healthy pelvic floor during labor and during postpartum?
Yeah. So one thing we don't realize is the pelvic floor is the center of everything, and everything is connected. If we hurt our knee, we're not surprised if our hip is also hurting. But if there's an imbalance in the pelvic floor, we don't realize that that can result in, leakage or incontinence. It can result in pain. It can result in things like tailbone pain or hip pain or back pain because everything is connected. But especially postpartum, I think one of the big things that we hear about is incontinence, which, though it is common, it is not normal. And it is something that we can fix with exercise and seeing a proper PT who specializes in pelvic floor. So the goal is to create this strong, balanced pelvic floor to hold up everything while we're pregnant, to help us more easily deliver our babies. If we can learn to relax the pelvic floor and kind of get out of its way, pushing our baby out when that time comes is going to be a lot easier. We're going to have less tearing. Postpartum healing is going to be more efficient if we have worked on preparing those muscles after we have our baby. And that goes for even people with C-sections. We don't realize that the pelvic floor muscles are really taxed during our pregnancy, no matter what type of delivery we have. So we have to heal and recover postpartum as well. That breathing technique that I just mentioned is the first thing I tell my moms to start practicing postpartum. Is just start practicing your deep breathing. It's going to wake your pelvic floor back up, and then we'll start with that healing process as well.
Thank you for that, April. One of the things that I would love to go deeper with you and that what you said is part of why we don't a lot of moms feel shame about talking about this because it's not very normalized and not a lot of people talk about it. So what I've been finding is that moms think that they have to just deal with it and it's just theirs, and that is incontinence after they have a baby. So why you don't, in your experience, why you don't share with us what is normal, when you have to see that you need to ask for help, and then also, like everything else, early detection will increase the chances of a faster healing and appropriate and thinning. And one of the most important things is that don't assume that you have to live the rest of your life with that situation. It's like, oh, this is just a side effect of having a baby, because it's not. So why we don't just talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, that's huge because so many people think that you have a baby, you pee when you sneeze, you can't go to the trampoline park with your kids. Like, that's just how it is. And as someone who, educates people on this, it drives me crazy when I hear a group of moms. I want to step in and be like, actually, ladies, let me tell you, here are some things you can do. Because it is common, but it's not normal. And unfortunately, healthcare providers, they really write it off as, oh, it's normal. It's part of having a baby. But in other cultures and other places, part of postpartum rehab is going to see a pelvic floor therapist. It's already built in. And, unfortunately, that's not something we have here. So the education aspect is important, and empowering yourself to ask those questions, to talk to your care provider, to see a postpartum or sorry, a pelvic floor therapist after you have your baby. Even if you feel like everything is fine, if you can see a postpartum, or I keep saying postpartum, if you can see a pelvic floor PT, it can make a really big difference in the healing journey, because sometimes you might feel okay afterwards, but a couple months down the line, you might start to have pain, or you might start to have incontinence. So I tell all of my moms, when you go in for your checkup, tell them you want to see a pelvic floor PT, like you want that referral, because we all deserve to have that, so we don't have issues down the line. Most things are fixable with exercise, with changes and shifts in your posture. There's so much that we can do without needing to have surgery or to do anything really dramatic to make sure our pelvic floor is healthy. And it's important because as we get older, this is where we start to hear about, oh, like, she wears a diaper, she always has to wear a pad because after she had a baby, like, things were just never the same. We don't have to live that way. And that's like, no one wants to deal with that. And no one has to. Even if you aren't able to see a pelvic floor therapist, if you start doing research, there's so much more research out there now. We're not teaching people to do 100 Kegels a day anymore, thank goodness. And you can find some really quality educators who are sharing information for free as well. So, breathing exercises, things that you can do for prolapse. There's so much information out there that can help you heal postpartum. And it's so important. So never think that you have to live with any of those sorts of issues.
And I love that, because it's the same with postpartum mood disorders. It's the same with breast milk issues. It's the same with incontinence. It is common. It's not normal. And the problem with that is that we, unfortunately, trying to be the perfect moms, are ashamed, don't feel comfortable talking about that out loud. And then on that time, we actually steal precious time for our recovery, precious time that we could actually use into having somebody to help us and say, hey, you know what? I did it too. And that happened to me too. And then start moving it from, oh, that's just the price that we have to pay to be a mom, into, yeah, I had it too. And this is something that you can do to support yourself to heal. And
Absolutely.
one of the things that I always told my mamas is, I always imagine the mom as either the captain of the ship or the head coach, and then we all need to have a support team. And it's matter of, I all about being proactive, not reactive. So I will even go a step further than what April was saying on in your checkup, ask for a referral. If you are hearing us today, understand everything that April is saying, and start putting that person as part of your team when you are pregnant, and say, okay, my team is my mom coach, my prenatal yoga coach, my birth doula, my postpartum doula, my lactation consultant, my pelvic floor PT, so that you start the pregnancy and start the transition of motherhood already feeling really supported, already feeling that you have a team behind you, that you have a team behind you that know your goals, know your dreams, know your expectations, and that, like always, if some of those team members, like the PT, the pelvic floor expert, can, since pregnancy, connect with you and give you a couple of exercises and understand what you want, then if you need them after, then the connection is already there, the relationship is already there. And I think that that is so important, because last thing that we want, like I always tell my mamas, have your team ready, connect with them, have a relationship. If you completely don't need one, some of them after you have birth, awesome. And if for any reason you need them, you already have the connection. You are not having the stress of I need to find somebody, and if I don't like this person and all that. So take all that stress from postpartum into pregnancy. Find your team, be confident about your team, and know that doesn't mean that because you have a pelvic floor PT person in your team that you are going to do need to have sessions and therapy after you give birth. No, but you are actually now going, instead of the defensive, to the offensive. You are being preventive, you are being proactive into taking care of your health and your baby's health.
Yeah. That's part of postpartum planning as well. I always tell my moms, we're going to find all these people now because you have them, and then that decreases your stress. If you need them, you're just going to pull their number out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, April, there is something interesting about um, how the practice of yoga with the breathing and the asanas and all that can help a mom during labor, knowing that labor can be like, usually people just think about labor like the after you do transition, and then you're having pressure waves every minute, and they are super constant. But actually, one of the things that I feel is, as more we start treating completely, as soon as we start having pressure waves, even if they are every 15-20 minutes, start using it all as a preparation for that last part as better. And I want to hear your opinion as a yoga expert, as a prenatal yoga expert, of how some of those tools of the movement, of the breathing, of yoga, of the limbs of yoga can be used during that journey of labor, from when it starts to when we are getting close to welcome our babies.
Yeah. So there's a lot of layers to unpack there for sure. So I personally think prenatal yoga taught the right way can have the biggest impact on the whole experience, because you learn so much about yourself as you move through the practice. And because you've taken that time to turn inwards, to connect to yourself on the journey, to connect to your baby, to practice those moments of stillness, of meditation, of relaxation, whatever it is that you call it, it's easier for you to get into this state of flow when you do start labor. Because if we practice yoga off the mat, we can use it as a skill to affect how we respond to things that are happening within us and around us. And, especially for a first time mom, when you start to feel like things are happening, the anxiety just kind of blows through the roof. So we use those skills that we practiced to calm ourselves down, to stay present, to stay connected to our body, and to get out of our head. So part of meditation is just kind of getting out of what we call the monkey mind and finding a place where you feel calm. And for everyone, that's going to be different. For some people, they focus on their breath. For some people, they listen to meditations or music. For some people, they practice mantra. I've had some students who just like focus on something, and that's what's going to bring them to that state. But it's easy for them to use those skills that they learned in yoga to cope with whatever's happening in that moment, and to realize when things are shifting and changing that this is normal. This isn't scary. Like, I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to reevaluate what I'm doing. The poses that we do in the practice mirror the movements of birth so much. we do, I would say like half of the practice in my classes are also poses that we could do for labor, for pushing baby out. Like, you innately learn how to move your body. So when you are laboring, you just kind of automatically go back to those poses, like the hip circles that we do, or the cat and cow tilts, or the one leg lunges. Your body has already done that. So it just kind of eases back into that flow. And you can use those movements to both help move your baby down, but then also ease the sensations that you are experiencing.
Thank you for that. So, what I'm hearing you to say is that taking some of those tools from yoga, the breathing, the movement, the meditation, the act of getting back into present, into empowering us throughout the labor journey to actually feel that we are in control of the experience, that we are leading the experience with ease. And then one thing that I love that you said is, this is not scary, this is normal. And I think that part of that is so important is, and I have a theory about this. I have a theory that God knew how sometimes birth and postpartum could be so hard and dramatic, that I have a theory that around 18 months, 24 months, a fairy comes into our memory and really dilute all those memories. Because one of the things that I found when I was in postpartum, I was like, I was finding like anger. I was like, why people didn't ever talk about those things? Why nobody ever? Why I didn't hear this from anybody? And then as I start cutting it up, I said like, it's because they don't remember. And then start making a joke with my husband. I said like, because the reality is, if every mom that had a hard time will remember all that hard time vividly, the chances of us losing humanity in 2 generations will be really high, because not a lot of mamas will have more than one baby. Um, so that is why it's so important to have people like you, like me, that create a program while we were in that frame, in that window. So we actually say, yeah, this is what is happening, it's normal. So instead of taking in for surprise our mamas, then they can just be like, oh yeah, April told me that this is normal and this is part of what we need to do. Now I'm expecting it. When it comes, I can use my tools to actually flow better. I love that you said. Let's gonna work a little bit into what is a state of flow, and how a mom to be or a new mom in the fourth trimester can aim to stay in a state of flow, and how she can know, like if it's a mom that is new to this, that is starting to do things in her house, how a mom can feel in her body that she's in a state of flow.
So I think the easiest way to describe a state of flow is to think of a time when you were doing something and you were surprised that time had passed so quickly. And it's usually you doing something that you enjoy, whether it's, you like to bake or cook or paint or organize, whatever that thing is. The next thing you know, you're just like, oh my gosh, how did that time pass? And you're in a place where you were just like doing your thing. It felt good. It wasn't stressful. That's flow. That's flow state. And that's where we want to spend more time as humans. And especially, I think, as mothers, we need to find that, because when we do, it makes us better. It makes us better moms. It makes us better people. We feel better. So, in like kind of the yoga of motherhood, is finding little bits of that, because things do look different, especially when you have small children. You don't have that luxury of getting in that flow state for an extended period of time. How can you find little pieces here and there? And that's where I like to kind of work with my moms and figure out what it is that brings them joy. How do they relax? And help them try to see what that's going to be for them. So early postpartum, a lot of moms have told me that they really, because they come to yoga, whether they were yoga practitioners before or they came to it because they were pregnant, and they pretty much fell in love with the practice. So a lot of my moms postpartum what I have them do and they have really good feedback on is they will set themselves up in what we call a restorative pose, where they just kind of grab some pillows and they get like nice and comfy. Usually we'll do like one leaning back so they can get a nice chest opener, and they'll put on a meditation for a couple of minutes. I'm a big fan of Insight Timer. I don't know if you've heard about it, Joe. It's a free app. It's Android and Apple, and it has all kinds of meditations. So I always tell my moms, just, set it for 3-minute meditation. You can do 3 minutes and just breathe. Find that nice flow of breath. And while they're in that space, once they get out of their head, that 3 minutes went by like that because they found that flow state. It could be taking a walk around the block on your own or with your baby. You get to that place where your brain is just not going a mile a minute and this weight is lifted off of you ever so briefly. That is the flow state. So as you get more time, as your baby gets older and you have little spaces, what can you do to fill that space? Can you read before you go to bed if you love to read? If literally scrolling the internet helps you find that place, then 10 minutes, give yourself that window. That's your time to scroll and then move on to the next thing that you need to do. So it looks different than pre-children, and we just modify, and you want to find that place as much as you can. And I think as your kids get older, you can also find it with them too, which is really cool.
I love that. And one of the things that I love that you say is you bring back something that is very powerful. And I've been sharing also with my mamas, and is that the latest research are showing that as short as 90 seconds of deep breathing are enough to completely reset your state and your brain waves. So
Yeah.
talking about, we were talking at the beginning of the core at the beginning of the show, that we say, okay, I don't have 60 minutes. Mama, you don't need 60 minutes. Like
Yep.
April was saying, you can actually have 3 minutes. The first 90 seconds, the first half of the 3 minutes is your brain resetting and getting done. And then the other half of the 3 minutes are you enjoying those benefits. So I love how you are making like simple things to say like, hey, you don't need to come to a 45-minute, 60-minute class. You can actually do this 3 minutes. And one of the beautiful things that I remember when you were talking is at the end you say include it with your babies. One of the things that I work with my mamas and they love to is start doing some of this breathing while you are breastfeeding or you are bottle feeding your baby, because then you are doing it, but then you also have the baby, so you also have the happy hormones, and then your
Mhm.
baby's also learning by feeling you have those deep breaths. Like it's different when your baby's close to you and you're breathing normally, like April taught all of you how shallow it is, that when you are doing those deep long breaths and meditation, that you allow your baby to feel your thoracic box, like April was saying, expand and contract. So I love that, April. April, to go a little bit deeper into this one is powerful because I know that people that is familiar with yoga are in that journey, but people that are not familiar with yoga can be a little confused about doing yoga out of the mat. So what do you mean is that I'm gonna do the asanas in my kitchen floor and not in the yoga mat? I know that that's not what you meant, but let's gonna talk about how you bring yoga out of the mat.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, I will also say that a majority of my clients that have come to me during pregnancy, they're new to yoga. They heard that yoga was good for pregnancy and then they kind of landed with me. And a lot of those moms are very nervous. And I get a lot of emails where people are asking me, I don't know, I've never done yoga. I don't know if yoga is my thing. And I love it because so many of them after the fact love yoga. Like they love it, they continue to practice it. And once you step on the mat, you start to realize how impactful it is. So, like you mentioned, 3 minutes of breathing literally resets how you feel. You just feel like a different person. And for 60 minutes in my classes, I'm reminding you to come back to your breath. I'm reminding you to just be present, to let your thoughts kind of float by, to become an observer. So we're learning all of these skills in our class, but we can take these little pieces like pausing, being mindful, paying attention when we wash our hands or take a shower. I mean, how many times have we hopped in the shower and then forgot if we wash our hair because we were not being present? But if we're present more often, there's so many benefits that we know scientifically have been proven from that. So being present, connecting to your breath, noticing how you feel. Those are the sorts of things that we start to do off the mat when we become yoga practitioners. And, it's these really simple things that we kind of write off and think don't have that big of an impact, but they really do. And if you just take the time to kind of squeeze them in here and there, you will start to see those benefits. I always tell my moms who tell me they don't have time, I ask them if they go online, if they go on Instagram or Facebook, and everyone says yes. So I'm like, okay, can we have 3 minutes of your scrolling time and just focus on breathing? Listen to a meditation, stand outside in the sun. Those little simple things are what we want to pull off the mat.
I love that. And I love how you make it very practical, because there is a lot. One of the things that we as yoga practitioners, some of us, because I know that some don't agree with that, but some of us struggle is with that Western approach of yoga, where the only thing that you see in yoga is the cute outfits and the fancy mats and the studio and the 60-minute classes. And then unfortunately that is what is permeating into people thinking that is what yoga is. That is what so many of your mamas are calling you, saying like, I don't know if I am going to do yoga, like I don't like that vibe. And I
Yeah.
love how you are actually taking that and say, okay, pause. There are things of yoga that you actually can do in your daily basis. I love how you say like taking a shower, washing your hands. And remind me, you say three things. You say be present, breathing, and the third one was
What did I say? Be present. So I was just in a flow state. So we want to be present. We want to be connected to our breath. And then we want to become an observer.
observer. Okay. So on that one of the things that I would love for you to share with us a tip, a hack on, especially on those last months, like the third trimester, when our belly is really big, we are not sleeping much, we are really considering to wear a diaper because we are so tired of going to the bathroom every 3 minutes and a half. And then on the fourth trimester, where we are sleep deprived, we are exhausted, we are overwhelmed, especially if you are new mamas. In those 6 months, what is one or two hacks that you can give these mamas that are hearing us around the world to get present, like how we can pause and allow ourselves to get a little window to be present when, especially those 6 months can easily be a torbellino, a hurricane, that you feel like you are in the go all the time, 24/7.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things that you can do. Moving your body is obviously extremely beneficial, but realizing that a couple minutes is going to make a difference. Like you said, I have 5 minutes. Making those things a priority is really important, especially as new moms. We put everything before us, everything. But it's really important that we take care of ourselves. And it's something that we should never feel guilty about. And it's something that we should plan for and that we should really try and work into our day. When I work with my clients who were preparing for postpartum, that's part of it. Who's your support team? Who's going to help you out? Can you get 5 minutes a day without the baby on you? Like, that's going to be your time. What do you want to do during that time? Do you want to stretch? Do you want to practice breathing? Do you want to listen to a meditation or a podcast? What is going to make you feel better? And scheduling that time out and making a priority, I think, is the most important part of that process.
And I love that, and I love how you are doing like, and then mamas, listen to me. what April was saying is 5 minutes without the baby, those 5 minutes are not for you to go and do laundry or for you to go and do dishes or for you to go and figure out how to fix the pantry. Those are 5 minutes that we want to start having almost like a ritual that is you, me time. Actually, the first couple of months in the fourth trimester, my 5 minutes were literally my husband take the baby and I will go to the bathroom, turn all the lights off, get in the shower and get a hot, hot, hot shower, just rushing water, pitch black. The bathroom was pitch black. I was like, don't having slow sensory, so I didn't have any sensory implications, and that was my time. So I love how you say that and how you bring that to be able to be present. And one thing that April was saying that is very important that we talked earlier, and I want to repeat to you, is the key to win the marathon of motherhood is be proactive and preventive, not reactive. And if you are hearing anything that we are saying right now, is the fourth trimester, you're going to have less energy, less skills, less clarity in your mind to prepare. So, as more you can plan and prepare some of these things during pregnancy, as better you're going to be prepared in the postpartum. So, as more you have your team, as more you talk with your husband. Sometimes it's as simple as talking with your husband and say, okay, these are the expectations. When the baby comes, this is what I will expect. This is the help that I need from you to actually have some time for me to take care of. So if you are hearing anything that we are saying, make sure that you start having these conversations before you need them. Because if you start having them when you need them, it's going to be a little more challenging. April, it's going to time to wrap up. I would love for you to actually share last couple of thoughts with the mamas, mom to be's, and new mamas around if you had one thing to give to them, if you have one thing to that you knew that was going to change their life, what you will say to them.
So it's a two-parter. My biggest recommendation is to find your voice as a mother, as a woman, as an advocate, and to make sure that you take time to put yourself first every single day. Because when you do that, you are a better person, you are a better mother, and you're setting a good example for your children.
That's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so if the mamas want to reach out to you, how they can find you, can you share with us your website and maybe your name of the studio in California?
Yeah, so everything is Unfold Motherhood. I'm Unfold Motherhood on Instagram, and my website is unfoldmotherhood.com, and that's where you will find all of my offerings. If you ever have any questions, you can always just shoot me an email from the website.
Thank you so much, April. It was such a pleasure to meeting you. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your deep love and passion for helping others. And I want, in name of all the moms to be and new moms, to thank you, because what you are doing is changing not only their experience, but also, like you were saying, unfolding how beautiful can be motherhood for them and their children, without some of the trauma, without some of the stress, without some of all the other things that unfortunately people like you and me experience. And that is why you are doing that work. So thank you for dedicating your life to make other moms life better. We love having you here. And for everybody in the audience, um, for everybody in the audience, this show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.